Hey Heather, I don't know if you guys can hear me, if you can give me some reactions. I'm having some technical difficulties, or maybe we all are. I don't know. Rob, can you hear me? Can you guys give me some emojis, some signs of life out there?
I,
Okay.
I hear you,
Okay, good.
Taylor, but I don't hear Heather.
Can
Okay,
you
I
hear me
didn't either.
now?
I heard a very faint, echoey, far off in the distance sort of sound from Heather for a minute. But I'm not sure what's going on. Heather, are you using any special mic or any Bluetooth
Yeah.
thing?
Can you
Oh,
hear
there
me
you go. I
now?
hear you.
Yeah. I figured it out and I feel like an idiot because I got some Bose noise cancellation headphones for Christmas, and I thought I had turned off the wireless or whatever, and I just realized that it's like, oh, I heard something coming out of my headphones over there on the side, but I'm speaking into the speaker. I mean, I have a microphone and everything too, so please forgive me. Does it sound okay? Is it echoing or anything?
Heather, it's supposed to be noise cancellation, not voice cancellation.
I know. It's like I thought it was turned off. They work too well. So now I am talking into the microphone and I have headphones on, but let me know if you can't hear. Thank you. What a great way to start the year. Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. It's our first space of the year, and we have to start it off with a little snafus and little issues. So thank you for coming back. We had a couple of weeks break. I hope you had a good holiday or break, however you chose to spend it. And thank you for coming to spend some time with us. So um, I appreciate it, and I would ask if my co-hosts, can you guys pass the mics to Linus and Matt if they can take it? Thank you so much. But we appreciate it, everybody being here. We do have our panelists here, so we're going to hopefully we can go through some of the news and a few predictions, and we'll try to get to some questions if we can at the end. But I appreciate if you put any questions in the chat at the bottom, and anyone here can answer those questions if you have answers, or if you know how to direct them to that, please do. But we'll kind of keep monitoring that as we go, and of course, plug yourself, drop anything you want in there to help. If you have something that you want people to know about, put it into the chat below. Make sure you use the emojis at the little heart at the bottom of your screen. You can let us know how we're doing. So if you like and just be happy, I think have seen a couple thumbs up and things like that. So thank you very much. But does everybody have a mic? I guess. Welcome, my panel. It's so good to see everybody here. And we figured since we're starting off, we didn't really get a chance to finish a recap of last year and all the things that have happened, but the news did kind of slow down somewhat. And I was wondering if Matt, if you don't mind, just like going over a few of the recent tools that were released over the last 2 weeks. Not a ton, but
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't have a list in front of me or anything right now, but I'll try to, rattle off a few things off the top of my head that kind of happened over the last couple weeks since we've been out of session, I guess you could say.
mhm.
There was Leonardo released a few new features. They released Leonardo Motion. They also have a real time prompting now where as you type, it literally starts to generate the images as you type it. So that was pretty cool, pretty interesting to see. There was the story about New York Times suing OpenAI. And this lawsuit actually feels like it holds a little more weight than previous lawsuits just because the articles that it was generating, it was basically generating them verbatim. I have my own thoughts on that. We can get into that whole thing later on and discuss it some more. I still think some of the claims are BS, but that was one of the bigger stories over the last couple weeks. We got the email from OpenAI about the GPT store coming next week. I know that's one of the topics that you guys wanted to talk about a little bit is the GPT store. So that we should be seeing that next week sometime. Um, I mean, other than that, there wasn't a lot of huge stories. There was some cool new research. There was this Aloha robot that was released a few days ago where it's a sort of general purpose robot that looks like it could do your dishes for you and cook food for you. And you know, do pretty much anything a human could do almost. And it's actually completely open sourced, and you can actually find the plans to build it yourself. You can actually download the training data and install it and have this autonomous robot running around in your house. I mean, to buy all the parts, it costs about $32,000 right now, but if you wanted to, you can actually build one of these yourself right now. So that was cool to see. DeepMind also released some new research that they've been doing into robotics and some new models that they just put out to help improve how the robotics work. I'm sure I'm missing some stuff. Maybe Selma or Rob or, or Taylor, somebody else could jump in. A lot of times I have a list in front of me of all of the news that's kind of come out over the last week when we do these Friday sessions. I don't have anything in front of me today, so I'm just kind of trying to remember off the top of my head. But you know, maybe somebody else here has some other things that I'm forgetting.
Yeah, let's talk about this robot because
Yeah.
so you may have seen this video around X of it's like cooking it's like an egg dish. I can't remember exactly what the dish is, and it's like cracking eggs and scrambling them in a pan and sautéing some vegetables and some meat. The video that was most viral was actually of this robot being remotely controlled by a human operator. And then there's another video of it actually kind of doing it as a robot. So, kind of first thing is always just be aware that even in when you see something that's not AI generated, there's still maybe some funny business when you see this cool stuff with robots and things. So, little mismatch on the skill level, although the robot can actually cook. Now, video aside, what's so exciting to me about this is two things. So, one of the things that we had happen last year that's going to continue to go wild, in my opinion, is the ability to train a robot off of video rather than having to train it off of physical motion, right? And so, the essentially being able to show it, this is how I cook my meal, now you cook it too. And that is such a powerful unlock, and I don't even think we have nearly scratched the surface on what that's going to enable. The second amazing thing here is I'm going to use the word affordable in the sense that yes, this costs the same amount as like a car, right? But that's within the range of purchasability of an individual and not just a company. And so hopefully we'll see, continued advancements here where, maybe one day having your own personal robot will only be $10,000, which again, still a huge amount of money for most people, probably the one of the most expensive things you'll ever buy. But when you think about what it could potentially do for you, could be pretty amazing to have this within reach of at least a certain amount of regular people. Like I love the idea that it's not just Amazon warehouse that gets robots to like package things in boxes or whatever, but that I may one day be able to make use of this technology. Like I think that uh, it should not be understated what happens when something can jump from sort of available to companies to available to consumers. Really, really quite amazing there. So I'm excited for this. I'm glad for the open source stuff. I think that we're on the track of some really interesting developments in 2024, kicking off this year with the hardware plus the software, right? AI is coming to the physical world, and it's exciting to me. I'm loving this development. I didn't really see this coming.
Yeah, I totally agree. When I was actually reading about it and researching into this Aloha bot, when I saw that it cost 32,000, my first thought was weirdly, that's a lot less expensive than I thought it would be. My first thought wasn't I'm going to go buy all these parts and build one of these for 32,000, but it was that's actually not a horrible price. I mean, that's getting into the realm of possibility for people. So I kind of thought the same things when I saw that. Now, these robots, they have sort of two modes. They have what they call the teleoperation mode, and then they have the autonomous mode. Teleoperation mode is basically the operator has like a set of handles and the robot is sort of strapped to their waist, and they use these handles to sort of force the robot to manually do things. One of the examples they show is they're using this robot to clean a bathroom, right? They get the robot to pull out some paper towels and spray down a mirror and then start wiping the mirror with the paper towels. But the whole time he's doing that, you can actually see him operating the robot with his hands and going through the motions and doing it. That's the sort of teleoperation mode. But the point of the teleoperation mode is every time it's doing this teleoperation, it is essentially training the robot. So if you look at a lot of the autonomous things that this robot was able to do inside of their demos, like cook the eggs and open up press the elevator button and go in the elevator, and some of these things that it showed it doing. If you read the research paper, basically what they did was they used the teleoperation mode to train it to do this, and it took it between 30 and 50 times before the robot finally understood it. But it's got this mode where you can sort of manually make the robot do what you want it to do, but as you're doing that, it's actually learning a lot of those operations so that in the future it can do those operations autonomously. So really, really fascinating. Love seeing that. So far this year seems to be kicking off with a lot of robotics news, which is really exciting to me. CES is actually next week in Las Vegas, and there is a ton of robotics stuff that's supposed to be announced at CES. So I'm going to be out in Vegas next week for CES, and really, really excited to see what they're going to unveil there.
The teleoperation, while needing to be physically close to the robot now, I can definitely see that expanding into remote operation of some kind of robot as well. And it's funny because there's this movie, I can't remember it now, but there's a movie about a dystopian world where this starts to take place, and it was like an indie film where there were a bunch of Mexican laborers who would strap into these like VR like sets and then go perform work in America eh, as robots, but they would never even leave Mexico, and like, it was terrible. But I think that there are some really interesting ramifications to the other side of this, which is how do we get large amounts of training data? Well, if we can remotely kind of zoom into to things, we can hire teams of people to like become robot trainers and get really good at this and do the tasks. We could potentially hire experts to teach a robot how to do something that not everybody can do. And that gets really interesting to me. And then just the idea that maybe I could be physically present in another space and like all the different potential there, quite interesting as well. Obviously not a massive AI advancement, but very, very cool. um, I want to talk about OpenAI and the New York Times lawsuit a little bit. Is that cool with you guys? Can we do that?
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile, especially since they have the deals with the other Axel News Group, for uh the training or using their data. So please, let's talk about it.
Right. So we're seeing this, and we saw this a little bit over the last year or two as well. This emergence of the value of large scale publishers with high quality data. Reddit, Twitter, now X, New York Times and related publications. There aren't a ton of these groups, but there are enough where AI companies they want access to that really high quality, clean data that they know they can use to train their AIs. And indeed, much of early AI training was done without the consent of the producers of data. The internet was not designed with what's going on right now with AI in mind, and people took liberties with data, and we can all have our feelings about whether or not that was appropriate or not, but it's what happened, right? We trained the AIs on all the publicly available data on the internet for the most part. And with the New York Times bot, it's quite interesting because they were able through careful prompting to get it to at times reproduce verbatim articles. And if you and Matt maybe has looked into this more deeply. I kind of superficially looked at it, where basically they were prompting it with the beginning of an article in a New York Times style, and they would start off like with the first sentence or a portion of the first sentence and allow it to continue. And often this first sentence was quite specific in terms of some of the details or information that it used, and then it would generate another article that looked exactly like the original. I think what we were seeing there is a phenomenon where when there's sparse amounts of data that have specific tokens or specific ideas, it becomes more likely for an AI to have to reach into its, AI brain or whatever you want to call it, and not find anything except maybe even potentially one entry from its training data, and then not be able to kind of make up things in the same robust way that we are used to. So it seemed to me like kind of an edge case, like finding a limitation almost of the technology that was unintended. Nobody wants it to be able to reproduce or regurgitate these articles, but yet they were able to show some scenarios where they could do it. So I think it'll be interesting to see how it goes in court, because I don't think that that was the intended result. And I think that it's going to be hard to show, like, oh, you built this technology to copy New York Times articles. Like, no, I don't think so. Like, I don't think that's really what's there. But it should at least lead to some more legal clarity around how organizations data, what protections are sort of intrinsic to a publisher, to your articles, to like what you've put out there on the internet, what permissions maybe people need to ask before taking that data. Like, I don't know, I think a lot of these gray areas haven't really been answered legally, and for better or for worse, we're probably going to get some guidance there.
Yeah, it's interesting. The New York Times article scenario, and the reason I said I feel like it's kind of a BS scenario when I mentioned it, was the way that they prompted it. And this is my understanding. I might be mistaking on some parts of it, but they literally plugged in the URL to the article, and then they copied and pasted like the first two paragraphs of the article, and then essentially asked it to continue, and then it managed to essentially verbatim write the rest of the article out with a few words swapped out here and there. But the way they prompted it was they gave it the URL and they gave it several paragraphs from the original article. So, who is going and using Chat GPT like that? That's a scenario where New York Times was going in and trying to prompt to find that gotcha moment, right? That's what it feels like to me. And also the timing of the whole thing is very odd, with the fact that OpenAI just signed that deal with Axel Springer to incorporate their news into the training. My gut feeling is that New York Times is, wanting some sort of similar deal. They're raising this lawsuit to try. Like, I don't think that New York Times is out there wanting to try to solve this problem. I think New York Times is out there wanting to try to get a payday out of it. But that's just sort of my general feeling from everything I've read about it, because the way they prompted it to get it to sort of repeat the article verbatim, nobody's ever going to nobody's ever going to prompt Chat GPT that way. If I'm going into an article to read it, why would I go and grab the URL, grab the first several paragraphs, and then ask it to essentially repeat what the article says? Nobody uses Chat GPT that way. So I don't know. I just kind of feel like the whole thing is sort of BS, and New York Times is trying to get their payday out of it. They're trying to get their sweet deal with OpenAI to get their training data or their information trained into it with, some sort of big payday for them. My guess is it'll either be, completely settled out of court, or New York will get some sort of announcement that New York Times and OpenAI made a deal for OpenAI to train on New York Times data. That's sort of my gut feeling, but the way New York Times approached it and the way they actually did the prompting, I think is kind of BS.
Right. It does definitely feel like they paid a team of people to try really hard to see if they could reproduce New York Times data using ChatGPT, right?
100%. That's what it feels like.
For people on this in this space, though, I think that there is another piece here that we all might be thinking about that I think is interesting, which is this is an extension of the changing landscape of like SEO, and what data gets surfaced through search, and whether or not it's valuable to post things online. Um, like, as a creator, I've been faced with this interesting dilemma in the last year, which is like, I could write some articles, I could make them freely available online, And specifically, these articles might be about prompt engineering and other really cutting edge things that aren't in the training data sets, or that are like 6 months behind in terms of like whether or not they could get scraped on the internet. But let's say I write that article and in 6 months, my prompt engineering guide gets scraped by ChatGPT. And now all of a sudden, all of my techniques that I've put on my website are in the training data. No one needs to search for them anymore. Well, that really makes the reason for putting them online less valuable in many cases. Like, right, I would put these on a website to what, drive traffic, and then maybe monetize that traffic through products or ads. I would put it to show my authority as a creator, as an expert. But then if the AI develops the same amount of expertise that I have, I'm kind of no longer an authority on this topic if it's just information anyone can get. And so I think we're all sort of faced with this same problem as the New York Times, which is like they pay really good journalists a lot of money to research these things, to fact check them, to write, in a nice style. Like, I'm not endorsing the New York Times or attacking the New York Times or whatever. I'm just saying, generally speaking, there's businesses, all sorts of businesses like this, that like they invest a lot of money in content. That's their business. And if the value of that content is severely diminished by AIs being able to train on it, and again, not saying this is good or bad, but it just changes the economics of the situation. And it means maybe it's not as valuable anymore. And if the content isn't as valuable, can we invest as much money in that content? Probably not. And therefore, we end up with, writers who are maybe not as talented. We end up with cutting corners on fact checking. We end up with, then we end up with news that's inaccurate, or biased, or like not stories that don't really have all the facts right, or something like that. Like, I think that there are interesting issues here. So both as a creator, should I even share knowledge outside of like a paid community? Or is it even worth my time? And also as a publisher, covering news or something else.
I have very, very similar feelings to you on this, right? Like I'm somebody who makes my living off of content creation, right? So the what's happening right now is a sort of threat to the business model that a lot of us have here. I personally think that investigative journalists, the people that do the deep dive research, the people that spend the time to research and create this content should be compensated. They should have they should get something for the time they put into that. And that's coming from somebody who's a content creator who wants to keep making a living the way I'm making a living. So I definitely see that. And I see where companies like the New York Times are coming from with this kind of stuff. I don't actually know the solution. I know personally I'm kind of getting sick of going to websites and seeing paywalls on almost every single news website now, or if there's not a paywall, it getting, just getting inundated with 4,000 ads on the website that you can barely read the content because the ads are covering up everything. I think there needs to be some sort of middle ground here, and I don't know the answer, but I am somebody that does think that the people that are creating the content are providing a lot of value to the world, and we should not disincentivize them to keep on creating that content. And I think AI and ChatGPT and things like that have the potential to really disincentivize people that create this content and do the research. And well, OpenAI and ChatGPT are sort of reliant on the people that are doing that because that's where their training and data is coming from. So again, I don't know the solution. I'm just sort of rambling here, but I do think there needs to be some sort of new thought out way for this all to work.
Do you all
Um,
think that it is as big of a problem as we're thinking right now because of the way we have so much, we're so close to the situation, but the majority of people don't use AI or they're not using generative AI? Do you think maybe we have a little bit of a cushion of time before it's really affecting
Well,
creators?
abs-
so
Absolutely, Heather. I think that this is a sign of the times to come. Like, we're seeing the very first cracks in the system, but I like we're what we're seeing is basically the next evolution of, hey, the sort of ads model that the internet has been running on for quite some time, in terms of search ads, in terms of, like content in general, and whether or not, like, how you monetize that content. I think we're seeing a lot of cracks in that system. And like, this may end up leading to new systems. I don't know what they might look like. Obviously, nobody wants to have to subscribe to 100,000 different sites in order to see all the content, but I could definitely see something more like a Spotify model, where all creators invest into some kind of framework, some kind of system where, content, if people who create content are compensated in a new way, that where money is pooled, where the AI companies have to chip in. I think that definitely there's something that's going to happen, and it might take 5 or 10 years, but I don't think that in 10 years the way that content is monetized is going to look anything like it does today.
Yeah, I think Spotify is the perfect example. That's one of the examples that I always like to sort of give when I think of where it could go, right? Like Spotify, you've got the musicians on there that are uploading their music, and every time somebody downloads or listens to one of the songs, they get, I don't know, a fraction of a cent or whatever. But in volume, it starts to add up for these musicians, right? I think that with AI, it could end up being something like that, where a piece of those subscription fees that you're paying for are, getting split among the content creators that the content was initially pulled from. I just feel it also gets very, very convoluted and confusing, and I don't know necessarily how that's going to track. And there's a lot of technical implications there that I don't totally understand how it would be handled. But that's probably the closest, the closest model that I can think of that seems workable in some way. But coming back to Heather's question about, like, yeah, we are very, very close to this. And so we're seeing this probably a lot further ahead than most people are seeing it. But at the same time, companies like Google are rolling in these generative search experiences directly into their platform. I mean, how far off are we from Googling something and then the response is just a AI generated response that maybe cites its sources, so we might get some clicks back to our content, but for the most part, you're never leaving Google because Google's just giving you the content right in front of you. So, I think we are close to it. We are very early to it all. But I think the big incumbent companies that already exist, that the people that maybe aren't as technically inclined as we are actually using right now. I think a lot of those sites are going to start to roll in this AI, and that's just going to be the way that they get content. I mean, my mom, when she's going and Googling something, she just wants the answer. She doesn't care if it's just showing up on Google's front page or if she's clicking over to a website to read it, right? And I think a lot of people on the internet are going to be sort of in that boat of, as long as the content comes to me and I get the answers to the questions that I'm searching for, I don't care how it came. But then there's those people like us that are out there creating the content that's, feeding these algorithms so that the people see the content in front of them. How does that impact us in the future? And that's where I still think there's a lot of gray area that needs to be figured out.
Taylor, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna, sorry, can I jump in really quick? I have a
Yeah.
lot to add to this, so hopefully I can remember everything. Matt, that's my Google experience already. I'm using SGE. I don't know if any of you guys are, but the search generative experience from Google. And I've now come to just rely on it to the point where it comes up when I Google something and I'm like, great, got my answer, time to move on. I rarely even scroll these days unless I'm doing research. So there's that. And then I think the thing that both of you said about like sort of the economics of this space changing in terms of content, I think that um, we're going to feel more of a shift towards access, not just access to the content, but access to quality, access to curation, and access to authority of like, figures and brands that are respected and trusted. So there's that. And then, God, there was one more thing that I wanted to add. I'll come back to it though. It'll come back up later.
Right.
Thanks.
One of the Oh, sorry, Heather, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Soren, I just saw where you wrote the same thing that we were just talking about recently, the Spotify for AI. I think,
Yeah, no, I
yeah.
appreciate you. This conversation is super cool. Yeah, so I guess I have a sort of interesting background. I previously sold data to hedge funds. It's sort of weird, but it's like a very similar sort of content market. And one thing I observed that was sort of disturbing is that I observed firsthand that content owners just have very little power at the negotiating table. The conversations almost always worked like you have some content, you think it's valuable, but the people to whom you're selling it are both very few. So there are only a few, in this case, AI labs, but they're also incentivized not to tell you how valuable your content is relative to their store of value. Because if they do, then that positions you to ask for more money. Um, and so I think perhaps New York Times lawsuit is evidence of this, that they actually went to the negotiating table and didn't get back what they had hoped for. So, for example, when I write about a Spotify for AI, what I see it as is really a data consortium. It's a place very similar to Spotify where people pool together their data, but this consortium has an additional property where I guess you could say, unlike Spotify, the music itself is made there. So in this case, this data consortium also allows open source develop well, and as I've imagined it anyway, allows open source developers to train models and also deploy them all inside of a boundary that's controlled by, I guess, an agency that has allegiance to content owners. And this way, this agency can be sure that all content owners are paid for the relative value of their data. I'll pause.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great vision. Obviously one of the problems with the Spotify model is that artists don't really make very much money on their music anymore. And so you see, like, okay, if you're Taylor Swift, yes, you're probably making reasonable amounts of money on Spotify. But if you're, a band under the A tier, you're probably not making hardly anything. Whereas in the past, you could have sold CDs or tapes or what have you and actually made a reasonable amount of income from that. Now, artists are having the way that they tend to monetize is through live tours, through access like special events and meet and greets and things like that, all through merchandise, all of these things that are sort of tangential and adjacent to the actual music, and that's had its own ramifications, right? Like if live touring is not really your thing, but you're an awesome, wonderful musician who could benefit humanity with your work, maybe you're never going to make it because you're an introvert and it's too stressful and you can't do it, and therefore it's not worth it to you to continue to produce music. I think that there are a lot of like unknown, unintended consequences of this, but it's sort of the best model after the sort of Napster era, where if files are going to be digital and people can kind of steal them and no one wants to buy the whole album, what do we do? Well, this is what we got, so oh, and the other way people are monetizing though is like through Patreons and things like early previews to songs or like behind the scenes footage, stuff like that. But so again, it's interesting because it's like alternative content. It's not actually the music. When it comes to our written content or our videos, like what Matt's doing on his YouTube channel or something, sometimes there's not as much, in my opinion, good behind the scenes. Like, trust me, you don't want to see the behind the scenes of me writing an article, because what it is a worse article. Right? Like, it's just it like there's not as much stuff there. Although I'm sure that there is other content, but yeah, I I think that it's a fascinating time. And then let's not forget the other wrinkle here, which is that in addition to being a consumer of the data, the AI labs consuming this data, they're also enabling the production of new data, new mixes and matches of things, and they're enabling and will continue to enable the most absurd increase in content creation, like something beyond, I think, what we could have ever anticipated, a decade ago, right? The As if we didn't have enough content being produced daily pre AI. It's It's like I can in the next 20 minutes generate 1 million words if I feel like it, and times 8 or 9 billion people or whatever it is. It's gonna be interesting. Go ahead, Soren.
Robert, I had one quick question. I wondered, with respect to how much money artists are paid today, for example, by Spotify or Apple Music, is this a function of just there being like an ostensible duopoly in terms of like what music platforms consumers have access to? That is, if there were more competition among the quote Spotify's of the world, do we think artists would get paid more?
It certainly does feel that way. So, for example, if the only way to play a music track is to go like on YouTube and hit play on a video that's monetized by ads, and so therefore, 1 million plays or something is actually worth a substantial amount of thousands of dollars. That's a pretty strong way to monetize. On the other hand, the same amount of plays on Spotify is like a thousandth of that amount of money. I don't have the data in front of me, but I'm certain that it's far less. On the other hand, Spotify is one of the top three apps that everyone's got on their phone, on their computer to listen. And if you're not there, you in some ways you may as well not exist. And so uh, definitely we can see in other places music can have a far greater value per listen or per play or something like that. But like, I mean, I use Spotify and Amazon Music, and I only use Amazon Music because I have some echoes in my house and like they they work better with it. But like yeah, and I want to replace them. I need a Spotify device. But anyways, like but it's really a thing. Like the music I just listen to every day is my Spotify playlist or my Amazon Music playlist, and that's it. It's almost like it doesn't matter what else is out there, and I don't know what to do about that because even a conscientious person isn't going to want that much friction in terms of being able to go out and get their content in a different app, or not be able to have a playlist that has songs from app A and songs from app B on it. Like that's just too annoying, right?
Rob, I really loved I think it was your suggestion around Patreon. One example I was reminded of was that of Google Maps in the era of Juno and Uber and Lyft. I don't know if everybody remembers. It used to be the case on Google Maps when you clicked rideshare, it would bubble up. Oh, you can take an Uber and a Lyft or a Juno, and actually compared prices. And actually, what was really interesting is if you use the feature now, you'll see that actually the only app that's still there is Lyft. And actually, if you study the market too, you'll notice that actually Lyft is not doing particularly well relative to Uber, and that actually Juno no longer exists. And the reason why I flag it is because on one hand we might imagine AI is this like, and for example, AI is propagated by an open AI, for example, is a principal interface through which we get all content. And for example, some have raised if your information is not in OpenAI, well, you basically don't exist. But it's also interesting to compare this to like this Google Maps aggregation case study because it actually turned out that Uber was the first to leave this aggregation. Uber was just like, I'm tired of like going through your gates. I don't want to play by your rules. If you want me, you know where to find me on the Uber app. And here Uber is with, I think, something like 75% of the market share. So returning to this notion of Patreon and like the challenges of Spotify, one future that feels kind of beautiful to me is that actually we sort of all collectively like discard these huge aggregators that for the most part have left. I don't know, like is the internet so great because, I don't know, like, Facebook, at least popularly, destroyed an election. I say that, sort of metaphorically or just, casually. Social media is known to like really have challenged publishers. Perhaps our future is one where we just find like much more local communities where we're supporting each other more directly than through these big aggregators. That feels kind of a nice humanistic future.
Yeah, I mean, if you're asking me, I like the vision of it, but I don't think that it plays into what humans are actually going to do, because people are lazy and they do what's easiest more often than not. And even when there's social good to be had, Um, you know, it's sad but true. Like people will kind of do what's convenient. And so I think that in order to actually, make progress on this issue, we need to make it very convenient for people to do the right thing or do the better thing. The other piece of this that's really interesting to me is I was thinking about American health insurance. Does anybody know how much their local hospital or doctor or pharmacy makes when they buy anything? Like, no, right? Like we have this weird obfuscation where you pay some ridiculous amount of money per month, and then the insurance company negotiates some kind of hidden rate, and then you pay some kind of copay, and it's all very confusing, and you have no idea whether or not your provider is being paid fairly, whether you're going, like, if I go to a hospital and I get to choose between two hospitals, is one more expensive or not? Like, I have no idea. um, it's all kind of behind the scenes. And when I think about any kind of new compensation model where artists and content creators are being compensated, transparency is definitely something that I'm thinking about. And with Spotify, we and these other aggregators, we have this kind of almost health insurance model. I was just thinking, imagine if you had that Google Maps thing when you went to play a song, and it said, play it on this platform and the artist makes this much money, or play it on Spotify and this artist makes a tenth as much money. I would choose the one, like, even in that case, I would choose the one that is more friction when I really liked the artist, every single time, because I would be like, I love the fact that I get to listen to this song and it essentially costs me nothing. I'd love to see this person paid, right? So there's certain aspects like that where I think there's opportunities to maybe change the game, but we've got to be clever about it. Um, yeah, because I think that yeah, people will not do the right thing if it's inconvenient and annoying. Heather, are we going too long on this? Do
No,
we
no,
need to
that's a
move
good
on?
point. And I'm sorry, I was just texting messaging somebody, but that's a good point, and I think I appreciate that conversation too, because if people have if you make it easier for them to make the right choice, or to at least have an idea that there is a choice, then I think that a lot of people would do something with it. And I've also wondered too, where at some point, like, everybody is not necessarily looking to monetize from their content. I'm not, and I'm completely for pay in compensation for creators, but then some people, it might also be just recognition, right? Getting credit for their work and just being recognized for that, because I know we do have issues with that right now, where people are, selling prompts on, prompt base or different, forums like that, that they took, that they use word for word along with images from somebody who posted online here. And, just different things like that, where it's kind of more like, well, at least just maybe getting credit for actually that being something, just a little bit of little shout out would go a long way. And I wonder if that would even be possible for them to, like, when we use Unsplash or something like that. Is there a way that we could do something where it's something where we get credit for that? If somebody would have to credit that person, or just some kind of attribution there. But I do appreciate the conversation, and I think that the um, legal field, at least in the U.S., having been, and I spoke to uh, the intellectual property lawyers for the American Bar Association. It's going to be a while before we actually get anywhere with the laws, but I guess we are making progress because of these different cases that are coming up, because they really don't know. They don't know what's going on. They don't understand enough about generative AI to be able to represent these claims, or to argue against them. And the same thing for the politicians. So it's going to be a wild ride this year, but
Right.
um,
Really, sadly, a lot of the people who are going to make the decisions here don't really understand the technology or how it's being used. And, part of that is it's not necessarily easy to understand, but there's a lot of misinformation out there, and a lot of um, ways to accidentally misinform yourself, right? Like we've all seen the posts where somebody shows ChatGPT hallucinating something and then makes some major proclamation about how useless it is. And then when you look at the way that it was prompted or something, you're like, well, you totally caused that hallucination by not doing a good job. It's your fault. But they don't see it that way. And the headline is still like, ChatGPT, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, whatever it is.
Right, and that's what people, when they see the story about the New York Times, they're going to think, well, that's a respected, record, a news record, and that they must have something there. And not saying that they don't, but when they see that, it's almost like validating their fears that it was stealing information or whatever. So hopefully, at least we can get to some clarity on that, that enough people can read, maybe have access to, and accept, or at least be able to judge on their own. So that, but we'll see, because it's everybody has different ways of interpreting their information, and just everybody try to use your think about different perspectives. Just be open-minded and think about different perspectives. That's what I would say. I did want to talk about, since the GPT store, I kind of forgot about it, that it was opening soon, and that was when I saw an email from OpenAI yesterday. That was pretty exciting. So I know we had spent a lot of time talking about that, but since we were just speaking about monetization and for the ability for people to for creators to do different things with it, I wanted to talk to you guys about that. What do you think about it?
I feel like I'm the GPT guy here,
Yes,
but
you are.
feel feel free to jump in. I know I've talked a disproportionate amount of time as usual on this space.
Well, I bought your
So
course for the GPT builder, so yeah, I hope that you can speak better than I can about it.
Yeah. So this segment sponsored by buildpowerfulgpts.com by Rob Leonard. No, okay. That's my GPT's course. So let's talk about the GPT store. So this email that came out was super short, had like 3 bullet points. It basically said, "Hey, the store's coming. Make sure you have your builder profile and your GPTs are set to public if you want to participate." Basically, so we didn't get very much information about exactly what it's going to look like, how people will be compensated. There's still a lot that we don't know, or where things have been said, but to me it doesn't count until it's live and I can see it and it's true. What we think that we can expect from the GPT store is some combination of the following ways to monetize GPTs. So one would be where you have certain GPTs that are pay per use, or some kind of like tier where people are literally, it's like a slot machine. Every time you want to pull that lever, you're going to have to put in the quarter. You might be able to set your price there and have pay per use. The second thing that we're probably going to see is GPTs that are part of some aggregate monetization thing where all the GPTs that are used have this pool of money behind them. And if your GPT is used 1,000 times, you get 1,000 divided by however many all the GPTs are used, that you like get your little share. And this to me reminds me of the Amazon Kindle store and this program called KDP Unlimited, where you can pay, I think it's like $19 a month on Amazon to read unlimited books, but it's only books that are in the KDP Unlimited program. And I use this, like I participated heavily in this as an author to build a 5-figure publishing business where I speed wrote romance novels. They weren't particularly amazing novels, if I'm being perfectly honest, but they were about specific situations and tropes and niches that didn't have a lot of content but had a lot of demand. So people wanted to read about these things. And the example that I like to give that I never wrote was time travel Scottish Highlander romance novels. So if you love the idea of being transported from your modern world into back in time and meeting a handsome, fierce, arrogant Highlander and taming his spirit and having adventures with him in the Highlands of Scotland, that book is for you, and you will read all those books, and then that the person who wrote those is going to make some percentage of money based on page reads. Okay, why is this interesting? Well, in the KDP store, in order to win, you have to master a couple of different skills to get the amount of volume that you need to make money. or make more money than if you were selling your book for $2.99 to $9.99 to $13.99, whatever it was for per copy, right? When we're paying based on page reads, the potential is different. So to win in that market, you need great titles, you need great covers, you need really good descriptions, which is to say that in this kind of marketplace, the value of your book or your GPT needs to be instantly apparent, and it needs to kind of like signal to the person, hey, this is high quality, this is going to do what you want, this is going to entertain you and sweep you away or perform your GPT action, whatever it is. So anyone who's thinking about monetizing GPTs in this sort of like, group compensation model needs to really be thinking about the branding of their GPTs and how they're using the very few words that you can put in there, in terms of making it so that anyone who comes across that GPT is instantly going to fall in love with it. Second thing that you do to win in the KDP, or on the Amazon store, is to artificially inflate, especially during launch, the interest in your book. And so you basically, you want to be like, when if someone searches for a keyword, you want to be in the first 50 books for that keyword. And the way that you get there is because your book is selling or it's being read. And then once you're in the top 50, when someone searches that keyword, they are more likely to find your book, and it's more likely to sustain that momentum. Which means that as authors, we do things like have a newsletter, and when we release a new title, we email everyone and we say, "Hey, go go do this right now," so that, and what we don't say is so that the Amazon algo, appreciates how popular this book is and boosts it to the top. But that's kind of how we're doing things. So creators like the people on this call who have an audience, who have a newsletter, who post on X and get traction, you will, when you release your GPT, will probably want to think about the marketing behind that GPT and whether or not you want to write a thread or a long form post about the problem that your GPT solves and encourage people to go play with it, to go try it out, to go use it. Or whether or not you want to have on your website or in your product or wherever it is some of those GPTs. I think that kind of like artificial traffic, so to speak, to the GPTs is really going to help influence who wins and who loses. Like, I'm going to win in the GPT store because I have courses that have GPTs that enable people who take my courses to apply the concepts of the courses. And so as I market these courses, I have hundreds of people going through using all my GPTs all the time. My numbers are going to look good. I'm going to have this kind of mutually reinforcing loop, and that's going to enable me to hopefully, make progress there. And I will continue to share how that goes on this call, and tell you guys whether or not I've been able to make anything happen. I feel like if somebody can do this, it hopefully will be me. But we'll see how it goes. So. Sorry that took so long, but I really think that, there's a lot of hype on X about, like, anyone can make $10,000 a month making custom GPTs, and here's how. You're going to see like a lot of these threads, and they're going to oversimplify the the actual process of winning in this kind of marketplace, where there's going to be thousands and then millions of these, and your GPTs are just going to be floating in the sea of a whole bunch of other GPTs, and it's going to be very unclear which ones are good and which ones aren't. And I think that it'll become that there will be an ordering fairly quickly of creators who always make good GPTs that you can trust, and different signals that you see. And hopefully eventually there'll be ratings or reviews or like some other social proof so that you can kind of tell. But I think at the very beginning, it's just going to be like, oh, this GPT has been used 50,000 times, therefore it must be good. And that'll be kind of the only metric we have to go on.
Well, it's hard to say too, like how people will benefit from it with monetization because we don't have any idea how they will pay, if it'll be some type of profit sharing, or what that will even look like and how much it'll be, right? So
Right.
if anybody reads anything, don't believe it because OpenAI has not revealed how they're going to do that.
I mean, they've said philosophically that they're interested in sharing the revenue with creators who create these things. So they've kind of made broad statements that they intend to share revenue in some way, which is to say that I think that it's definitely not going to necessarily have to be one where there's a price per use. That in order, like, there will be other ways to make money with this other than charging people per use. But yeah, we absolutely don't know how that's going to work. If it's going to be generous, if it's going to be ridiculous, like, I don't know.
So if you're a creator out there now, even if you're not sure if you want to monetize later or, try to see if you can increase your ranking on in the GPT store, it wouldn't hurt to go ahead and start using, if you have a GPT that you've made, go ahead and start using it and putting it into your threads or in your newsletter or blog articles or whatever, just so people can start using it and so that it gives you a little bit of a boost slightly, or just to get used to working with them.
Right,
I
and I'll teach you guys.
I just made one today. If
I
anyone,
saw.
actually, I made it like over the week, but I posted about it today. Specifically, a JSON transformer. So if you want to take just regular unstructured text, raw data, and you paste it right in, and it works its magic to make you a nice little JSON output that you can then save as a file and then load it into your own GPT specifically for training. So I don't know if anyone can share some thoughts on why JSON works so well, but it wasn't a thing that I've started doing until like pretty recently, like probably into December. I started playing around with JSON to train these things, and I'm like, holy shit, why wasn't I doing this before? Um, we don't talk about it enough. So there's that. And then the other thing is, do you think that these, and I'm asking vaguely to like the panel and anyone else who wants to weigh in, but do you think that these will replace these GPTs in the GPT store will replace like the plugins? And also, does anyone still use plugins? Those are my questions.
Yeah, plugins are being deprecated and sort of merged with GBTs. And so I think that we're going to see the plugins be basically turned into GPTs, where the plugins capability is now an action that the GPT is able to perform. I believe I've seen in the documentation and things strong indications that the notion of plugins is going away. Um, I just wanted to share with the group, if you guys have not created a GPT and you're curious on whether you should or how, there's one type of GPT you can make that's really easy that anyone can do, and I call these one shots. Or now I can't think of it, but basically any prompt that you use quite frequently, you can put into a GPT. And so what you do is you start the GPT by saying something like, for the user input, comma, like, do this, um, and then you paste in your prompt. Now you have the ability to run that prompt, like, without having to paste the prompt in, and you can just do it as many times as you want. And I imagine that Taylor's GPT that she just made, that turns a raw text, unstructured text into JSON, is essentially a prompt that you probably, worked on, refined, kind of iterated on, and now the GPT is basically like, run this prompt whenever somebody gives you something. Is that right, Taylor?
That is exactly it. Yeah. It was pretty straightforward. I actually used a regular chat GPT chat just to help me like structure the initial kind of conversation a little bit and to gear towards what I wanted it to do. But then, yeah, it was like a couple of hours of conversations back and forth to get it to like behave the right way. There was no external like data that I uploaded. I created all the templates just in the chat. So, yeah, I mean, I'll call it a beta. I made it mostly just for myself, but figured that, might be worth like anyone else checking out and letting me know if it's messed up or weird at all.
Right. So my point here is that you may have looked at monetizing your prompts before and either been intimidated by the options or disappointed by, sites like PromptBase and whether or not you could actually profit from them. But you may have some good prompts that do one thing really well. And there's the potential for somebody to take those prompts and turn them into GPTs that do one thing over and over again for people, and to monetize those. And I think that a lot of my GPTs are not going to be the other kind of GPT, which is like acting as a persona with a personality with a whole set of skills. those kind of GPTs are not as useful, in my opinion, as the ones that kind of do one or two or three, basic things. And sometimes they do it in a series of steps, or they ask a couple of questions before running their prompt or what have you. But that's something that anybody can create and that anybody can drive traffic to. And you just pick one problem that your audience or customer has, create a prompt to solve that problem, and then share it with them and say, hey, if you have this problem, go put your problem in here and it'll solve it. I think that is going to be the first kind of GPT that really takes off, where people, I don't know, people use these a lot. Like with the editing course that I just collaborated on, we now have GPTs that look for specific types of copy edits or developmental edits in your writing, and then return back, like you paste in your content, and it comes back and says, hey, here's some edits that you can make to improve that content. I think that's a really good use of a GPT. Anybody who wants edits, go throw your content in there. You could use this every single day, if you're a content creator or writer or blogger. Like those kinds of things, I think, are the ones that are going to end up winning in the marketplace.
Well, some people they are actually monetizing already, and I was wondering, I'm kind of confused at how do you do that? Do they have some way to put like a commerce something in there? How do they get paid for that? If it's on,
I
if
know
it's public or
I know the Grimoire, the code helper, which that's super popular with like hundreds of thousands of uses, has like a buy me a coffee button or something where it's like all donations. I don't think that you can monetize a GPT in a more straightforward way, um, other than something like that.
I gotta remember where I just read it, and I just checked the site. It was saying like so much. Maybe that is what they were doing. I didn't actually try it out, but there was a price per like maybe $5 for 100 uses, and I was just wondering how did that work, you know? But it's a site that it's like a marketplace for GPTs that's out, and I it was in a newsletter that I saw this week, and I'm gonna look for that. Um, it's just interesting because people might get the idea that you can already monetize it, but it just doesn't, not sure how that works and how that would work, but it could be a tip jar.
I
I'm
mean,
really curious about like Poe as well. If I don't, I know we've talked about Poe a few times, and I think that at one point there was like during all the OpenAI Sama drama, there was like some member of the board that's also the CEO of Poe, if I'm not mistaken. So there might be a conflict of interest because Poe announced their creator monetization for I don't even know what they're called on Poe, like chats or bots, I think.
bots.
Bots,
Bots.
yeah.
Okay, then there you go. They announced that like a month or two ago, and so I wonder if at all like OpenAI is kind of looking at that model and how they're doing it because some of them are like pay as you go. Um, I don't know. I don't know if you guys
Right?
have any other info.
I've made money on Poe. There's two ways that you can make money. One of them is to set a price per use on your bot. I don't think that this is a very effective way unless you really like create an entire landing page or something around why your bot is useful. Like nobody, even if the bot is worth the price, nobody likes to pay per use on anything. Like it just sucks. It sucks to pay 50 cents every time you put a prompt in. Like what if you what if you don't like the result? Like it just sucks, and no one likes that. That hasn't been very useful to me. But the other way that you can make money on Poe is by helping Poe uh, acquire new paid users, new subscriptions. And so I've been putting all my bots on Poe. And then if you're a Poe subscriber, you can run them more times than you can run the GPTs in the GPT store. So GPTs you have your like 30 or 40 messages every 3 hours or something limit. And so if you need to use them a lot, you frequently come up against that, and that's really annoying. On Poe, you can run way more often. I think it's like up to 1,000 GPT-4 bots in a month or something like that. I've never hit the limit, and so there's definite reasons to go to Poe. Poe bots can they can have a prompt just like GPTs. They can run on GPT-4, on Claude 2, and a handful of other models as well, including free models like Claude 1 and GPT 3.5. So you can create sort of free GPTs on Poe. And then you can also add documents just like you can with GPT. So some of the capabilities are similar. Some of the capabilities aren't. Like there's no code interpreter. There's no advanced actions, things like that. But I have helped them acquire new paid users who like the fact that they can basically use my bots as often as they want, unlike GPTs. And it's like $20 per user or something like that. It's not a lot, but if you're a person with an audience, there's no reason, in my opinion, not to sign up for the monetization program. So I'm not doing this because I want to make money. I just sort of am doing it because I think Poe is a cool product, and people use it and people appreciate things about it. And here's the other cool thing about Poe. You can a regular person can run, I think, 5 Claude 2 queries per day, and Claude 2 is just about as capable as GPT-4 for some queries. So you can create advanced Claude 2 bots that are sort of semi-limited to people, but they can at least preview them and see them, which is different from GPTs where you have to be a ChatGPT Pro subscriber to use a GPT. So if you're willing to create Claude 2 versions of your bots, it's a great way to allow people to preview what they're getting before they buy. And that's probably the main source of me making money there is people they like the preview, and then they decide to pay as a result of wanting to use it more than 5 times a day.
So with Poe, when you pay the monthly price, you can access all, it's unlimited for any of the bots, including yours.
It's not unlimited. But the numbers are so high that even I've never hit the maximums. But it's like 1,000, uses per month of GPT-4 and 10,000 per month of Claude 2, and it's a lot.
So for some people have mentioned like they were thinking about, I think Taylor, I think we were talking about that, whether or not it was worth it to keep a ChatGPT Plus subscription if with Poe, if you have the
Yeah, I
paid.
asked you that. Yeah, because I
Yeah,
was like, so a couple months back, it was all I wanted to use was Poe. So like, yes, I did subscribe, but I considered for a minute just like getting rid of my ChatGPT Plus. And Heather so kindly pointed out that that's not a great idea because there's so many cool beta features and things that come out that you really only get access to if you're a paid subscriber. So, whatever. What's another $20 on the list of all the tools? So
well,
here we
the
are.
GPTs, like you just made the GPTs, and that's what I was wondering. Like, would you be able to do things like that if you didn't have um, the ChatGPT Plus
Yeah.
subscription?
Yeah, exactly. Probably not.
Rob, we're sorry. You know more about Poe than we do. Good.
I love Poe. I use it every day. I think for anybody who is interested in AI enough to be on this space, you're probably not going to end up canceling ChatGPT. Their new features coming out so often, being so innovative, and having access to code interpreter and some of these other and GPTs and things like that, all extremely valuable. However, if we take one step down and we look at like just regular business professionals using AI in their daily life who are not building GPTs, who are not doing all this stuff, I think that there's a lot of kind of, I'm going to use the word regular people who could have Poe and not use ChatGPT and get more value out of Poe than ChatGPT. So I do think that it fits in a nice spot in the market. It's just kind of a weird group right now because it's like most of the early adopters are a little bit more like us, where they're trying to do interesting things that are kind of beyond what regular people can do, and then a lot of regular people aren't using AI very much at all, or they're using it just for silly stuff or to write their wedding speech or like I don't know. They're not like using it every day like we are. By the way, I saw a chat GBT joke on, I'm going to admit to watching this show, Love Island, on a recent episode of Love Island Games, when one of the characters made like kind of a speech about why he chose his girl at the choosing thing. Um,
Oh my God, I
that
know exactly what you're talking about, Rob, because I had the exact same experience. And everyone just looked at me and was like, yeah, this is happening. They're talking about ChatGPT on Love Island right now.
right. The speech was a little generic, and the girls were like, "Oh my God, this is AI. This is ChatGPT wrote this speech." Like they were not having it. Huge diss, guys. You never want if for everyone here who ends up on Love Island, you never want that to happen. Let's just say that you don't want them to think ChatGPT wrote it.
Yeah, who would have thought we'd be talking about that? But Allie, you're back. We were talking about GPTs, and you have any plans to build any, or did you build any more that you might want to put in the GPT store?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I decided that I was going to walk while I'm on the spaces. So, because, New Year's resolutions, got to get some exercise in at the same time. So, sorry if you hear some extra noise on the background.
No, you're
So,
good. You're good. Go ahead.
okay, good. So, I don't personally have plans on building, at least not at this point, any GPTs that I would sell. I have some that I use for my own purposes that are doing a great job. However, I'm not as bullish about the whole GPT. Again, I don't know. I missed the whole convo about it. And I saw Matt's post earlier, and I 100% agree with him, unless he's changed his mind, and then I don't. But uh, so have you changed your mind, Matt?
I have not changed my mind about my thoughts on GPTs.
Okay, good, because you summarized it very well. That's basically what I'm feeling. And this whole time, even from the beginning, I've been a bit hesitant or just reserved, I guess is the right word for it. So I'm yeah, more on the wait and see. And I feel that there's going to be potentially just a few that will, benefit, but who knows? I'm open, but I am not rushing in to build things at this point. I'm using the ones that I'm using and potentially creating some more for myself, but that's not going to be part of my repertoire, at least in the AI space at this time.
Right. I think that one of the big issues with GPTs is just not knowing what you're going to get, not knowing what it's been tested to do. Like when I create a prompt for myself, or when anyone here creates a prompt, you know what the prompt does, like through the process of writing it, iterating on it. You kind of work it into a place where you have expectations for what it can do, and it does those things. Now, you don't get to experience that when you go and see someone else's GPT. They say like one sentence on what it does, and you just kind of like have to go off of that and then kind of almost like learn the GPT. And this is actually one of the reasons why I disagree so often with other people in the AI space who say that they think that there's going to be like like AI is going to be the new UX, and that in the future, you're not going to just have websites. You're going to like just go talk to the AI, and it's going to have it's going to answer all your questions and do all the things for it. Like, I don't believe that. I think that user experiences really benefit from having a visual UI that sets expectations. When I click this button, I sort of expect this screen to change, in an app or something like that. And that's actually very useful, because then you see all the buttons, you see the menus, you see how things are laid out, and you intuitively understand how an app works. With an AI, there's nothing. You don't know what are all the things it can do, because you don't have all those buttons, all those menus, all that visual stuff to kind of cue you in. And I think that naturally makes it difficult, just like it's difficult with your Echo. I'm not going to say her name that starts with an A, because she'll talk back to me. But you don't know what she can do. Your home speaker assistant, because she can't show you. The only way she can do it is tell you. And every time she tries to tell me about something she can do for me, it annoys the crap out of me. Right? She'll be like, "Hey, yeah, I just told you the weather. Do you want to hear like the traffic?" And I'm like, "No, I don't want to hear the traffic. Like, I'm not asking you don't even know where I'm going. Like, no." you know, right? And I think that that's the way it is with AI. as a UX, as an interface in general, we don't know what these things do, to the down to like, we don't know if it's going to give you a short answer or a long answer, or like, we don't even understand the outputs. Um, so yeah, I think that there's still a lot of things to be figured out here in terms of making GPTs easier to understand. And it's actually why I think most of my GPTs that are going to be the most successful are going to be sets of GPTs that all have kind of a common reason for existing and have common outputs. So if you make it like like I was saying before, I now have a set of editing GPTs, and all they do is check for various things in your writing, and they all work pretty much exactly the same way. You paste in your writing, the output that comes out is in the same structure for all of them. And so you can look at all 10 of those and know exactly what you're going to get if you've used one of them. Um, and I think we're going to see more value in creating these kind of like consistent outputs and just setting expectations. And so you'll know, hey, whenever I use one of Rob's GPTs that does this, I know exactly what I'm going to get. It's going to be this. And users need that to want to use something, to have confidence in what they're going to get.
This might be kind of crazy, but I was just thinking, do you think that we might see eventually that you could list these your GPTs on a resume for a job or a job application, depending on, something that you could do to add like a soft skill or something to the office or something specific for whatever your role might be. It might
Yeah.
show
And
creativity.
You know what's funny?
well,
I want to say something about that
go ahead,
because I
Matt.
was listening to, I don't know who's listened to the interview with Sam Altman and Trevor Noah. It's an excellent interview. It's on Spotify. Really good interview. But there was a piece of the conversation where Trevor Noah actually brought this up to Sam Altman of how in the future he can see that like the job interview process could actually just go away because you can send people to your not custom GPT. He wasn't actually talking about GPT specifically, but he was saying you'll be able to send people to your custom chatbot that knows everything about you, knows all of your past work experience, has your personality baked into it, and is a digital representation of you. And when you go to get hired for a job, you could potentially send somebody to this AI sort of avatar chat version of you and let the interviewer interview this chat to learn everything there is to know about you, saving you time in the interview process. Now, I don't know if that's actually going to play out that way. It's just that's what that question just reminded me of, is that we could get to a point where on LinkedIn, you're posting a link to your custom AI avatar. And if people want to learn more about you, they just go have a conversation with that avatar. And if it is truly trained in on your personality and speaking style and beliefs and work experience and all that kind of stuff, then they can learn everything they need to know about you before hiring you from having a conversation with that bot. So just wanted to throw that out there because it was very fascinating based on your question.
I just hope that they, oops, sorry. I just hope that they can um, deal with all the like BS sales pitches on LinkedIn as well. Because if that's the case, I'm so down for this. Make me a digital replica.
I see your bet and I raise you to online dating. And imagine now, instead of just looking at somebody's like Tinder profile, you get the AI version of them, and you get to like, in a stress-free, private way, try and have a little bit of a conversation with them and see if you're vibing with the AI before you have to deal with the real person. And if the AI is like trying to get in your pants like too fast or pushing your boundaries or something, you could be like, you know, I'm not really vibing with this guy's AI. I don't think I'm going to go on that date with him.
Rob, but what happens when they're both AIs? So they're just two AIs hanging out and like trying to see if they're compatible. Like, is that? I don't
Well,
know.
then your AIs fall in love and you don't get to keep them anymore, and you have to go back to dating humans. If you're actually, there's a good movie. I think it's on Netflix about and and I think it starts with an S, but the premise is um, what's the name of it's like Supplicant or something like that. The premise is two people in love make a pact to make AI clones of themselves in robot bodies that they keep on ice and upload their memories to, so that like when they die, their love will live on forever. And and it's quite fun. You can watch the movie and see how it plays out when one of the it's not a spoiler, but one of them dies at the very beginning of the movie, and then so now you have one human, and then you have one android copy of their love, but that's not the real lover. And should we really allow our love to play out in an AI world, or not?
Yeah, that's
So
actually a similar. There's a show on Amazon called Upload that's actually like a comedy show that sounds like a very similar premise. And I think the end premise is like, do you really want to be with somebody for literal eternity? Like think about that, you know. But yeah, there's a show called Upload on Amazon that sounds very similar. I'm pretty sure it's also a premise of a Black Mirror episode somewhere along the line as well.
Yeah, they upload the consciousness. I like, yeah, I saw the first season and I think it was really good, but it does make you wonder, like, yeah, even after death, I don't know. Do you even want to be running around at a resort and if you run out of money, you end up in the basement or something very Black Mirror-ish. Well, Amy, thank you for joining us, and I wanted to let you go ahead and speak. I'm not sure what you wanted to talk about, if it was on these lines or not, but I know that you have a lot of experience with mental health in the workplace and how you have an app. Did you want to share something with us?
Oh, yeah,
Sorry to
I
put you on the spot.
actually, well, I have a lot of, like a huge passion for, workspace, wellness and for, I improving the culture analytics inside workspaces, and really looking at, improving the culture and from a mental health perspective, within workspaces and what you were talking about with uh, what you were talking about, Matt, with work. Uh, Recruiters being able to just go to an employee's avatar. I could imagine Indeed.com actually doing something like that. Um, because they're kind of already doing something like that right now. Like one thing I've seen, I was reading about this the other day that they have a tool where employers can now have a candidate uh, just like upload, like record their response to a question that they have. So they're not even scheduling time with the candidate now. Now they're just recording, some kind of response to their canned question. Like there's no conversation or getting to know the candidate. It's, just kind of like, oh, okay, well, you know, we're gonna store your answer, and like, maybe we'll take a look at it, maybe we won't. And there's no even taking the time to schedule, like a meeting with a candidate, like it's it's a very detached, inhuman kind of way of interviewing a candidate to work for your company. Truly.
I think we're going to see an arms race in a way with this that's going to lead to actually an increase in the need for one-on-one in-person interviewing. And that's, you guys have probably seen the videos of people using these apps now where the AI is auto transcribing the interview process and giving you the answers on your screen. And there was one where a guy who like knows nothing about mechanical engineering interviewed for like a rocket science job or something, and was able to pass, like every single question in the technical interview. And so we have that on the candidate side, and then on the hiring side, we've already got tons of AI enabled in some of these hiring platforms to help them screen resumes and find the best fit candidates, and kind of, anyone who's ever done hiring, like, oh my god, if going through 1,000 resumes, it's like the worst thing that you sit there going, hiring is the most important thing that we can do for our organization, like having the right people is such a huge competitive advantage, and it influences the culture and all this stuff. So you're like, "Heck, we got to do it." And by the time you get to resume 80, your like eyes are bleeding and you just want to kill yourself. Like it's horrible. So, organizations, of course, are going to use AI to help screen candidates. But so now we have candidates using AI to write their resumes, to apply for the job, to write their cover letter, to do their interviews. And then we have organizations using AI to screen the candidate, to read those AI written responses, to conduct those interviews. I think that there's going to be a time when people are like, look, we are going to, with no screens, no digital, like no nothing, sit in the same room and stare at each other until we decide whether or not I want to hire you. Because we can't even tell who people really are anymore in the hiring process. Amy?
Yeah, yeah, but I think that that's going to cause an uptick of compliance companies. So I know someone who is he's has a company called Polygraph AI, and like it's basically a governance company that is going to be able to um, produce some kind of verifiable proof of whether or not something has been created by AI, or something is AI, or if something is real. I mean, this is, yeah, I'm sure you probably have seen the AI influencers that are there are a couple of screenshots that I saw on X that were like, oh, this is an AI image holding on to an like a notepad that is AI notes taken or something, and it looks like 100% real, you know. It's really very bizarre. The other thing I was going to say is I've created a couple of GPTs that have been pretty useful, just in an everyday kind of way. Um, and like the things that I did for myself were like, strategic planning for my own company, just like creating my own cheap GPT that has all the data and everything in my own company. And, but what I did also was that I safeguarded myself, to have OpenAI not have access to any of my own data. And so like I signed like a privacy kind of thing, ensuring that the OpenAI wouldn't be training on any of my data before I started making any of the GPTs that I've made. Um, the other thing like that I think is kind of cool is you can use some of the GPTs in there, just kind of look around. One of them that I like is the negotiator. So you can just like, have basically just kind of in your, I mean, I'll do this in my off time. I'll just be like, okay, I want to maybe prepare for a sales meeting, like a sales call. And so I'll, put in like my own sales pitches and stuff like that. And I'll deal with whatever kind of pushback there might be that a person might have on a sales call. So, it's in those kind of ways, it's been kind of helpful. Yeah, just to kind of share from my own perspective. Thanks for letting me
Wait,
be part of the conversation, Heather, and
yeah,
Taylor.
thank you,
Thanks.
Amy. I appreciate it. And I think, Matt, thank you for pointing out that what she was talking about. I think we posted it at the top there with the verification bypass using Stable Diffusion. But yeah, so that there's all kinds of things out there about verifying the accuracy or whether or not it's screening for AI. And do you all think that the majority of them they're pretty hard to say whether they're accurate or not? I mean, it's impossible that they. How do we know that they're accurate? What is the purpose of that
I mean,
beyond trying
the
to see if it's a person that is applying for a job or taking a test?
Oh, Salma, you gonna go? No, I saw her mute microphone go off.
Oh,
Um, the the OpenAI, AI detector that they had, they took it down. And a lot of these AI writing detectors that I've seen that were being used by educational institutions have caused more harm than good. They were inaccurate. There was tons of false positives. There were times when they were working well, but the problem is that they just weren't reliable. And I think that it makes a ton of sense, right? It's quite easy to tell just as a human if looking at it, if someone does like a very basic prompt in ChatGPT to write something, I can pick out like, oh, ChatGPT wrote that. But if you do a fairly complex prompt with various instructions on the tone and the voice and syntactical things and idiosyncrasies and all the stuff that I like to include in what I call a write print, then you can reliably produce content that none of these detectors think is written by an AI, like over and over again, scoring 100% human written. And I think with the images and things, there may be some other aspects to it in terms of like the way that the pixels come together. Like maybe there's some things that could be detected, but I personally don't think that it's a very easy task to to try to figure out whether or not something is created by an AI unless there's some kind of like algorithmic or data or like file format or there's some other piece there. Just if you're just using an AI to analyze text or images, I don't see that ending well for us. I think it's going to be a continual one upping of, the AI writers get more human like, the detectors get a little bit better, back and forth, and there will always be people who figure out how to hack the system. um, it definitely does feel like there needs to be a little bit of a fingerprint or something dropped in on things in order for it to be seen as AI created. But then when we do those invisible watermarks, in like say images from Midjourney and things like that, there's ways to remove them. And so if you really want to remove that kind of information, that you can. Allie?
Yes, I can speak a little bit to the image and potentially, any type of a more a visual thing, how that is potentially going to be addressed. But I 100% also agree with you on the written part. That's going to be quite challenging. And also, let alone like, as we progress, yes, we are going to find out new ways to try to kind of circumvent that or have shortcuts and, not get detected. But that's something that David, the founder of Midjourney, brought up in the office hours on Wednesday, is that because they are recognizing that, and especially in United States and with the elections coming this year and for other reasons as well, but this is one of the big concerns, is that there are going to be a lot of people creating misinformation and images that are going to be quite bad regardless of which way you look at it, right? But the potential of creating some really challenging or questionable images is there and it's real. So he said that they are thinking about working on a system. So it's not necessarily like a watermark or whatever. I don't know the details, and he didn't really say either. But it's basically a detection system that platforms, for example, or fact checkers would be able to know that that was generated by AI. So it's not something that we would see at all, but it is something, and it wouldn't be given to everybody, right? So it would be only made to help everybody. So let's say like all different social media platforms, that they could use it to then basically fact check if something goes out and see if that's AI generated or not. And of course, there has to be some kind of other potential safeguards that you just don't allow generation of certain images. But again, even there's a potential to bypass these types of things anyway. But I thought that that was a pretty smart idea, at least initially. I don't know exactly how that would work, but I can see there being that benefit. So it's almost like a community notes, but it's more like, okay, somebody posted this image. Okay, we're going to check it and it's AI generated, and now we're going to take it down because it's basically misinformation or done to, have propaganda or whatever, right? So that is potentially more solvable, at least from the sounds of it. But I'm certainly more skeptical about the written language as we move forward.
Right. And so I wonder if the Midjourney solution is going to look a little bit like the auto music copyright violation detectors that you see in tools like YouTube, where it can tell if you're using copyrighted music like in the background of your video. And the way that they're doing this, like I don't understand it, the technology fully, but basically they take a library of songs, they get some kind of information, audio information from those songs, and they do a comparison where they see, even with the other noise that's in this video, is underneath that any version of this audio. And then they've done it in a way where they're using lightweight enough processes that they can do it quickly and automatically. And I think that Midjourney could essentially get a fingerprint of every image that they generated and put that in some kind of vector store or database or something, and then allow fact checkers to go, hey, does, like, put an image in here and see if the fingerprint matches any of the other fingerprints in our system that indicate a high likelihood that that was one of the Midjourney images. When it comes to something like Stable Diffusion, which anyone can run on their home computer, you're not going to have a log of all of the data that was generated. And so I think that it'll be interesting to see if Midjourney actually has some way to tell if an image was created by AI, whether or not it's a Midjourney image, and they have some sophisticated way of looking at the pixels, or if it's rather just something where they're going to kind of keep track of their own images and make sure if the misinformation comes out, at least it's not a Midjourney image that was used in that campaign.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they meant that it was just for Midjourney images. My understanding at the time was that it would be for any AI generated images, but I don't know how that would be possible. Or are we just going to be still looking at the fingers and hoping that we'll see six instead of five?
Jeremiah, I wanted to let you go ahead and get in here to the conversation. Thank you so much for coming and joining us.
Yeah, and
Looks like you had a good conversation yesterday too. I was looking at
thanks.
your Facebook.
And it's
Uh,
great to meet a few folks that I follow online and folks that I see around. So cool. So if we could backtrack just to the hiring conversation, there's this like arms race discussion 10 minutes ago. Should candidates use these tools to one up, and then should the hiring team use these tools to one up? This is a race to nowhere. This makes no sense at all. Like for the hiring process to be using the antiquated methods doesn't make any sense. So what I think we'll see is a performance-based interview. So we will see candidates that will be using AI as part of the interview process. And you will look at the outcomes. They'll say, if you're applying for a marketing job, all right, generate a marketing campaign. You got 24 hours and use all the AI tools at your disposal. Go. And here's some budget if you need it. Or if you're hiring, you said mechanical engineering, okay, go build this product. Here's some of the specs. Use all the AI tools at your disposal. Go. Show us what you can do. Give us your maximum productivity using all the tools. And I think the same thing for college candidates. Show us your greatest thinking using these tools. You have an arsenal of researchers and MBAs and PhDs that can help you refine your thinking. Show us how you can use all this information to come up with a great thesis. So we need to redefine how we're going to be measuring humans' creativity and performance. The interview process as we know it is dead. That's it.
I agree with you that it's definitely dead, and we do need to do something that levels evens the playing field for more people, because I think too many of us. I searched for jobs for 5 years as a pharmacist. I could not find a job in any sector of pharmacy, and it's like a lot of times my it might even be for the same exact role and title that I had in my previous job, and it didn't even make it to the hiring manager or whoever was looking at that. So I agree that there needs to be a lot of different ways to be able to prove or to show what you can do, and I think that would be excellent. What do you guys? I don't see why people would have a problem with that if you're able to show that.
I mean, first of all, I want to compliment Jeremiah in being the most succinct speaker on this space I think we've ever had. Like, straight points, really well organized thoughts, great sound bites. I'm super jealous. I ramble my way through. Jeremiah's just boom, 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 done. And then I forget what it was, but he ended with like great one liner too.
Yeah,
So
we had silence. I had to try. I tried to fill it in for a second, but I don't think I did a very good job. But thank you, Jeremiah.
I'll tell you what. I want to be able to interview my potential new boss if I ever have. Oh, I'm never. I'm hopefully never going to have a new boss. Now that I'm working for myself, but like I've actually gotten hired into jobs where the person who hired me turned out to not be very good at their job, and I want to flip the script on this process as well, make them show their skills. But this outcomes based hiring method, I think that we've been trending in that direction for a while. Most of the best hiring that I've ever been involved in had some kind of temporary paid project that before the person was brought on full time, they worked for a few hours or up to a few weeks, and you just don't know whether a candidate is going to be a good candidate unless they actually get in and do something. And I think you're absolutely right that with AI out there, we're going to need to find more verifiable ways for people to show what they can do. The challenge is just that not every job you can get up to speed or do sort of a simulated activity or something that is good, like has the characteristics that would show whether or not someone would be good for the job. And I think that's the hardest part, is like how can we have someone work for 4 hours on this project and then or 24 hours or whatever it is, and then show what they've done and actually get a sense of whether or not they're good at things. I think there's still a lot to work out, but I'm with you on like let's see the outcomes, let's see the results. Let's not just like ask a tricky engineering question that either you know it or you don't know it as an interview question. Like, let's see, can you put together some code that does something? I think that's a much more productive way to hire.
Just to add on to this too, I think what we're talking about here could help eliminate a lot of sort of biases as well, that, whether they're actively being biased or it's like some sort of subconscious bias. I feel like a lot of what we're talking about could eliminate the bias, right? Like think of like the show The Voice, right? Where somebody sings and nobody can actually see the singer. All they're basing it on is their singing voice and how well they do, and then they decide, do they like this candidate or not? Right. I feel like what we're talking about here, if there's no information about sex, there's no information about race or sexual orientation or any of that kind of stuff, then the job interviewers, the candidates, it's based more on what they're capable of doing, and maybe some of the personality that's baked into this, more so than any of these external factors that really shouldn't matter. And so I think that's sort of like an interesting progression from this as well.
I think some of this comes back to also what Rob said about, there's potentially the, lack of a better word, incompetence of the potential hiring manager or the bias of that person. So even if you were given the same, task for everybody and you pick the best one or whatever, however that seems fit, there still may be that, I mean, at the end of the day, the human probably makes a decision because they will argue that they don't want to have the AI make the decision because they don't trust that that's going to be the right person for their organization. And that is typically, well, at least from my experience, because I have been also not hired because apparently I didn't fit into their box. And that's because I don't fit into boxes. So there's that. But they literally were looking for a person that does everything exactly the way that they do. And therefore, they don't want anybody to there, even though they say on paper that they are innovative or they are, open and they want the best person for the job. That's not really what they're looking at the end of the day. So I'm just wondering, not to say that it couldn't be done, but I'm just wondering that there's probably going to be growing pains as we move forward. And I also agree that the way that it is done right now is broken.
Right. I mean, the interesting thing about bias is that there's no such thing as no bias, in my opinion. Every system, every AI system is going to be designed to prefer one kind of output over another. And the bias, yes, may be to be representative of all people or to not be offensive, but that's also a bias in its own way toward a certain type of behavior. So, um, knowing that we can then create systems that are biased toward any kind of behavior that we value, organizations could potentially create hiring AIs that are biased to find candidates with certain characteristics that they value. And one of those characteristics may be this person operates in kind of a very similar way to how everyone else operates. We want a homogeneous organization. We don't want anyone rocking the boat, and therefore let's make sure that the people like Allie don't make it through the hiring process, and use the AI to create that homo homogeneity, or whatever the word would be. On the other hand, there could be an organization that values having lots of different perspectives and work styles, and that diversity is one of the strengths because it brings so many new ideas to the table. And in that case, the person who works exactly like all the people that already work there is going to get rejected by the AI because, for that reason. So what I'm saying is that you can program your values and your principles into an AI, especially while you're fine tuning. And we've seen this with Anthropic and their principled AI methodology, where Anthropic's models like Claude are supposed to be helpful, harmless, and honest. The way that they tune them during the feedback process is that they'll have a foundational model while they're building it generate multiple responses. They'll score those responses on how helpful, harmless, or honest they are, and then they'll choose the one that has those characteristics and send that one back in as the sample that was the best, like the better example, and they'll either reject or put the other one in the, like, hey, this was not the good example, and then they retrain with that data, right? But though, like as we've talked about before on this space, that comes with its own consequences, because then you have AIs that are trying so hard to be helpful, they have the inability to like give very critical feedback that might hurt your feelings, that would actually be the better feedback on your content or on your business plan or whatever. They are, oh, sorry, that would be the harmless one. Like they don't want to hurt your feelings, so it's going to kind of softball it to you when maybe tough love is actually the most useful. So I think that we'll see eventually in our society, um, there will be personal AIs for people. There will be corporate AIs for companies, and there will be subsets of these where you eventually have multiple AIs that are specialized in various things like hiring, and those personal or corporate AIs will be tuned to certain principles, certain values, certain priorities, and those priorities may get quite nuanced or even be impossible to define with words, right? You could tell an AI, like I could envision a world where an AI looks at everyone who works in a company and tries to understand the vibe, and then you say, help me hire people who fit into this vibe, and it's, you can't define it with a couple of adjectives. It's whatever. It's a thousands of numbers and data points in the matrix, or what have you. But it is a thing that the AI comes to understand and then to prioritize. And I don't think this is necessarily bad or good, but I think that we all should be aware that even when we attempt to get an AI not to be biased, we're still, and even when we attempted to give principles that I think we all can agree are good, like yes, I think we all probably want our AIs to be helpful, unless you're a masochist or something, right? Like you want it to do what you're saying it should do. Um, but there's consequences to that we don't fully understand, and we are biasing that behavior in ways that can come back and produce unintended consequences in society.
I think in theory, then also, if you look at it from the person who tries to get hired, or just both sides of the, not, instead of just looking at the organization's standpoint, is at the end of the day, it should produce a better match when we have many more data points from both sides. Because a lot of times too, as a candidate, you will look for, far and wide, and many of those are probably not the right choices anyway, because they're not the kind of company that you would even like to work for, but maybe you just have to work for there. But in an ideal utopian world where the candidate then matches, almost perfectly, or, close to perfect, to the ideal company, or a, group of candidates to a group of similar vibing companies. So, I mean, I guess that could be the positive.
Right, and you send your personal AI out to do a vibe check with the corporate AIs, and we're back to the online dating conversation we were having earlier. But now it's work dating, not just online dating.
I'll still be single.
Well, Jeremiah, since we have you here, would you mind? We were going to talk about predictions for what we expect to happen this year. I was wondering if you might have anything you want to share, any predictions, or what are you most excited about going into 2024?
Heather, was that directed at me?
Yes, I'm sorry, Jeremiah.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
No, I couldn't hear just a second. Well, that's kind of you to offer that opportunity to speak on that. Thank you. So here's my
Oh, no,
prediction
thank
then.
you.
Um, I think the most readily available use case is our completely broken inboxes, but our email inboxes. Like, Heather, how many unread emails do you have? Matt, I'll bet you have a crap ton, because you have so many followers on YouTube. Everybody's pinging you, right? So the interesting thing about the inboxes is we have maybe 5,000 sent emails, 10,000 sent emails. All of that is data ripe for pre-training for an LLM. And so I expect by December, this time, 11 months from now, December, at the end of this year, that we will see a number of email agents that will enable Inbox Zero for real this time. And obviously there's a step gates here. One is to read the emails, prioritize them, summarize them. So that's phase one, is sorting, and then two is preparing basic responses based upon all the data, the pre-trained data on our sent emails, and then finally giving us a number of small to medium-sized to lengthy responses in which people can respond. You can choose those responses or edit them over time. And then over time, we will train these AI agents. In fact, I'm hosting an event in February in SF on AI agents. I'm choosing 10 AI startups, agents to demo. I don't have any financial ties to them or anything. I just want to see what's in the market. I host events in SF, and that's what I want to see. And that's one of the main use cases I think we should see and look for, is that Inbox Zero should happen due to AI. And when I find that company that does that, I'm going to fund them. So I really want to see this happen. It's such a problem.
Yeah, I want to see that happen too. Thank you. That's an excellent use case. I just got a message from Google saying that I was approaching my limit and I needed to do something. But
Wait, how many emails do you have? God.
oh, I don't know. Between Gmail, I had a Hotmail, I think I got about 30,000,
Oh,
my
wow.
Outlook or whatever, and then Gmail, I have a couple different ones. I have about 50, 60,000. I'm really bad.
Ugh. See,
I'll tell
but you're
you,
not alone. It's everybody.
I would pay money for my ex DMs, just an AI that would check, is this person selling me something, or are they actually trying to like talk to me? Because
You know,
the
you can tell already from reading it if you
right,
accept
right.
it.
I don't want to click on it though. And so here's a tip for everybody here. If you DM somebody and you're not trying to sell them something, in the first three words, like, make that very clear. Do never ever DM someone saying like, "Hey, Rob was checking out your profile," and then go on to say like something nice that they would want to read. Like, start it off with something that is not that, because I'm I'm like, it just looks, if it looks sus, I'm not clicking on it, because there's no mark as unread on the DM, so there's no way once you open something to not have to action it. And so I never want to open something unless I'm in the mood to like, take action. And anyways, I welcome our AI overloads on our inboxes. I think I have 6,000 unread emails. Sorry, I'm sure some of them are from some of you guys on this call. um, following that though, Heather, in terms of predictions for 2024 and AI agents in particular, I think one of the places we're actually going to see a big move is in, I'm going to use the words like therapy and coaching and healthcare, psychology, some things like that. I think that we're going to see an emergence of AIs helping people out with personal problems in private, in really great ways. And I've experimented quite a bit with AIs like this. There's two areas in particular that I think we really need to address as a society, as humans. One of them is the elderly. There are a lot of people who are very isolated, who are older, who spend, like hours and hours and hours just sitting in a room alone. And I think that the quality of life of our elders could be dramatically improved if there were some AI companions that were out there. And I know this sounds dystopian and so forth, but it's like there are people with Alzheimer's disease and things, and it's getting worse because they don't have enough social interaction, or the loneliness. They go into a nursing home, they just die 2 months later because there's just nothing. And I think that the there's an interesting phenomenon when it comes to humans. There's something that happens to us when we're young and when we're old, but not really in the middle, which is we're willing to kind of accept magic. We're willing to suspend our disbelief. We're willing to entertain these things. And I see it with children, and I see it with older people being willing to form relationships with AIs and kind of like get something out of that relationship. That, and I'm not saying this in like a bad way or a creepy way or an inappropriate way, but just like to kind of open yourself to that experience. I think in the middle of life we get very critical of things, and we're going to see slower adoption of these technologies for people kind of the ages of the people on this call. But I really do think that, and I not just think that, but I hope that, and may indeed hopefully contribute to this, that there's a lot of social good that we can do to help people process their emotions, have companionship, do all these things. Not just AI boyfriends and girlfriends, but in this case, I'm just thinking like AI friends. And I think we could all, uh, respect the usefulness of somebody to talk to where the stakes are basically zero.
I'll try to say something without tearing up, but thank you so much for saying that, Rob, because my father died about a year and a half ago from dementia and complications with dementia, and we had to have him institutionalized right at the beginning of the pandemic lockdown in several states away. But the craziest thing was he was still working as a substitute teacher and coaching. We didn't realize how severe his dementia was, but he had started because he lived alone and he didn't have somebody that could see the progression over time. So those little things that he could have used as a reminder, because you start losing decades first, you start losing the time that's closest to you, and then it goes back to your younger years. So it started kind of disappearing, and then different things were happening. He had an aggressive form. But along with that, I was vaccinating seniors in the nursing homes during the pandemic as soon as the vaccine was released. And, regardless of how you feel about that, I went in at the height of it, December 2020, and into all these different nursing homes, and the people that were so grateful that they hadn't seen anybody for months already, and then they were just happy to see us even though we were going to give them a shot. But that kind of companionship outside of the people who were working there and the other residents, and people were dying, and it was a lot. But that is a very important thing in the way that we treat mental health, or even the elderly, the seniors. We often, they are just sitting there neglected, or we don't put much effort into making sure that they have companionship or somebody just to make sure. I saw people who I gave them a shot, and 3 weeks later, when I came back, no one had moved the band aid or anything off their skin because they didn't have, even at those facilities, they didn't have anybody that was able to take care of them. So that is a very important thing, and we should all think about how we would want to be treated in later years in life. Oh, Jeremiah, please go ahead.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that story about your family. That is heartbreaking and one of many stories of a broken healthcare system. So, first of all, thank you for just being vulnerable in that. Thank you. So, Rob, there are a couple of tools I've seen out there that can help with relationships in AI. Now, I have mixed feelings on all this because, the best thing is human to human, but anxiety and depression at an all-time high across the world right now. Me personally, I had my first anxiety attack in Q1 last year. That never happened to me before. I think it was just a whole bunch of shit that just piled up. So I got through that, but and it made me sensitive to like, wow, a lot of everybody around me as I talk to people is hurting, but there's not enough healthcare professionals. There's not enough therapists, and they only work 8 hours a day, if that, and they're expensive, and they're not around when you need them, which is probably at 3 a.m. So there's a couple tools out there. I do not have financial relationships with Miri.health. That's one that is a LLM based that can be trained off healthcare professionals. I know the founder, her name's Amy. She's fantastic out of East Bay. And then the other one is Inflection AI, which I do have ties to. It's the co-founder is Reid Hoffman, who is an advisor to my firm, but they make Pi. So try, if you haven't tried Pi, Pi stands for personal intelligence. It has like emotion. So it looks like Heather might have tried it. So I'll let her like give anybody who's tried it come forth and talk about what it is. But it has voice capabilities like Chat GPT that was mentioned 30 minutes ago. I think you said that, Rob. So check out Miri.health and check out Pi, Pi.
Right. I like Pi. I think that there's a lot of real interesting aspects to the to the AI there. It has a bias towards asking questions to keep the conversation going. And after a while, or at least this was how it was a few months ago, Pi can get really annoying with like start to feel like you're being interrogated, like with the best intentions. But I'm excited to see. I think that they have a new version coming out soon, to see it,
Yes, that
where it's going.
launched 2 weeks ago.
Awesome. I got to see if I can get my hands on it. One last press release, it wasn't public yet, but um, yeah, it's a really interesting challenge creating a conversational AI that you actually want to talk to. This seems like it's already been solved, but it hasn't really. We have issues like, does it remember you? Does it remember what you talked about yesterday? And how does it signal that in conversations that it remembers you? And remember that as humans, one of the ways that we have relationships that we build one, and this is actually a tip for anybody, if you want to make people like you, remember something about them and let them know that you remember it the next time that you see them, or at some point. Like, people are thrilled to remember that, you find out someone's into this sports team because they're talking about what happened with their team on Sunday. And if you come back the next time you talk to them, you're like, oh, what happened with the team last weekend was terrible. Like, they will love you. Folks like Barack Obama and Dwayne Johnson, and like, there's a lot of people who are kind of known as these amazing conversationalists, and one of the things that they're known for is remembering details about people. Well, AIs don't do that, right? Like, the typical AI experience today is your conversation is wiped clean, and you're back talking to the amnesiac AI the next time. So I think, or what I hope to see this year, and what I'm excited by or for, is this some solution to memory, long-term memory, which there are other challenges we haven't even talked about. Like, I think long-term memory is going to see some major upgrades this year, but also from a conversational point of view, hopefully the emergence of some technology where it's able to remember things about the user, develop a relationship with the user, and kind of remember what that relationship is. I want the AI bots that I create to eventually start slow and cautiously, um, interact with users, and then as people show that they're getting more comfortable with the user, for the AI to kind of be able to be more comfortable too, but not be so comfortable at the beginning. Like, this is how humans do it, right? Like, we don't just dive into the super intimate, super vulnerable stuff right away with someone you just met. Like, that's going to freak people out. You need to kind of ease your way into relationships. So lots of like fun little challenges there that I think we're going to start to see solved this year.
Well, let me see here. I don't want to interrupt there, but I see it is 7:06, and I know Jeremiah has to go, and I thank you so much for coming and joining us today. And I just wanted to kind of go around, and I guess we can sort of, wind it down today. And thank you all for coming back for our first space of the year. And we did pretty good today with 2 hours. We're doing pretty good. But I want to be respectful of time, and my kids are still waiting for me. They had their first half a week back at school, so I'll go check them out real fast. But at least we can go around and what's everybody doing? Anything interesting happening? You can plug yourself. Jeremiah, if you got to go, you want to say, please,
No, that's
you can go
gracious of
first.
you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I'm just consuming lots of AI content. Matt, your videos show up high on YouTube for me. So I see your stuff from here time to time. And then Heather, I see your tweets a lot. They show high as well. So I host events, Llama Lounge. Llama Lounge, it happens several times per year in San Francisco. AI founders get to be on the demo floor. I just want to feature them and I invite my VC friends and we take a look. That's me.
Thank you so much for letting us know about that Llama Lounge. Yeah, now I'm going to pay more attention. And thank you so much for even engaging with any content and for coming here. I really appreciate it. Allie, you want to go next? Oh, Allie can't hear me. I think I'll have to send her a message in the chat. Matt, you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, I'm just kind of doing what I've always been doing, deep diving, researching, keeping my finger on the pulse of the news and the tools and what companies are getting what funding and all that sort of stuff, and then turning around and talking about it on X and on YouTube. I'm planning on continuing that. Next week I'm going to be at CES out in Vegas, so if anybody on this call is going to be out in CES and you see me wandering the halls, come say hello. I'm an introvert. I'm not somebody that's going to typically initiate the conversation, but if you come up and say hello, I will continue the conversation. So I'm hoping to see some people out at CES next week, and hope to make some fun content around some of the cool stuff they're showing off there. But that's pretty much what I got going right now.
And congratulations for hitting that 500,000. And I see you went past there, so congratulations. I'm not sure who got the glasses, or do we need to? They need to tune into the
Yeah,
show.
so and today, the episode that I put out today, at the end of the episode, I mentioned the 5 winners of the glasses, the Ray-Ban Meta smart glasses. And I'll probably start up another competition like that again because that seemed to help grow subscribers. So seemed to be a winning strategy. So I'll probably be doing a lot more competitions like that.
Yeah, it sounds. I should have tried to get one of the no, but no. Thank you very. But everybody, please tune in to Matt because he did have a nice update of recent news, and you can find out who won those glasses. But my YouTube channel will be up and running basically. It's up now, I guess, but by next weekend, next Friday, I'll go ahead and have like a launch. So I'd appreciate that. If anybody could just check me out and see, I'm gonna start uploading some videos soon and get busy on that because that was a goal. But Salma, can you hear me? If you can hear me, do you wanna? I know you said your connection is choppy. If you wanted to just say goodbye or anything, what's going on with curates? She may not
I
be
think
able.
Salma
Okay.
might be underground.
Oh, okay, okay. So I know
I
she
feel
was
it.
going out.
I can
Um,
go though, real
yes,
quick,
please, Taylor.
just to get it out of the way. As always, I love these spaces so much. We're here every Friday, pretty much, and it's now we Heather. We can officially say that we've been doing this for like more than a year now. How crazy is that?
Yeah, we
Uh,
have. We have. Actually, I started like last, like 2022. And
Two, yeah,
yeah,
in
that
like
like
the
around the
fall.
day before Thanksgiving. And then yeah, but we've all been coming. You guys and Matt have been here since January or so.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're in it. We're doing
Yeah,
it.
so if you guys just happen to stumble in here and it's the first time showing up, just know that these are regular every Friday, almost every Friday. Occasionally we'll take some time off, but almost every Friday we're here, same time, same place, chatting about all the things AI and getting a really kind of like grassroots perspective from all of us who are using these tools and just kind of sharing insights and learning, directly from the horse's mouth, which I always appreciate. About me, I am still, to echo what Matt said, I am still doing what I do. I write a newsletter. I have a podcast. I write here also on X. So if you are a creator, marketer, or a creative marketer, creative type person, I have a weekly newsletter with some premium stuff that goes out every week called The Sauce. So you can find that in my bio if you care. And if not, that's totally fine too. And then the other thing is I mentioned that I did the JSON GPT, and that's really in preparation of the full GPT experience that I talked about a couple weeks ago, which is kind of creating like a second brain for myself. And the reason that I needed that JSON GPT is to convert all of my data into that format. So I'm going to be releasing that whole like guide download thing. Right now, it's just a bunch of crazy notes in a doc. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be next week. And that's me. Thank you so much, Heather, for this space, as always. Love you guys.
No, thank you so much for co-hosting for the past year. I really appreciate it. And I was used to be terrified every time I would come near this mic. If anybody is worried or anybody has anxiety, I think I mentioned that in one of Robert Scoble's uh posts that he put out. But yeah, even today I got a little bit nervous every time get ready to open this room. So don't feel like something's wrong with you if you get anxiety for any reason like that, because it's normal. I don't know if Matt feels that way too with before you go on, turn the camera on if you think about it, but yeah, it's not like we're not used to this kind of thing, and speaking to people and having people that depend on listening to the news or information that we're the topics we're talking about, and we don't take that lightly, and really really appreciate everybody that spends time here with us. And I hope that everybody is doing well in that you're making it in this space. And I'm trying to go through these comments here, and thank you all for mentioning different things and dropping information into the comments. I really appreciate it because it is a lot to get to throughout this time. Rob, you think you got Allie's not there. We went through everybody, but Rob, what you got going on?
Hey guys, I have a new cool thing for creators, freelance writers, content marketers, anyone creating content where the value of your words is tied to the value of your job or your business. I partnered with Erica Schneider, who's edited over 3 million words. And as some of you guys know, I've published over 47 titles on Amazon. So we have a writer and an editor coming together to create Content Editing 101, a new AI enabled course for you guys to learn basically how to self edit your own writing using all the techniques that a pro editor would do. And it's a really cool course. We kind of pioneered two things in creating this course. One is a podcast style video format. So with each lesson, you get to hang out with Eric and I. We laugh a lot, we joke around, and we share valuable insights about writing and editing. So way more fun than just a talking head. You get a written lesson on each framework, and then you get an AI bot that can help apply the framework in your own writing. And so you may learn, for example, about using verb tenses to make your writing more impactful, more persuasive. And then you've got an AI bot that you can drop your content in, and it'll say, hey, let's change this to the simple tense for a more direct statement, stuff like that. So really cool course at contentediting101.com. If you want to see, or if you want to have fun, if you want to become a better writer and have AIs to streamline the whole thing, that's what we've got for you at contentediting101.com.
Yeah, I went ahead and got that finally. So thank you all. I love your style and Erica's style. Excellent. And it's so easy to follow. You don't have to put a lot of time into it. And I appreciate the tips that are specific for creators online, especially because it learning how to write on X is it's more difficult than blogging and content writing, I think. Well, I know because you have to say we have larger character values or character limits now, but people aren't going to see it if you don't structure it properly. In the long form posts, you know how it is, where only so much shows up. So it's valuable for everybody here if you want people to see your content to learn how to effectively write so that people will take notice and that you are speaking to your audience. But thank you all so much. Again, look around the room, and if you see people that you recognize, then or that you don't, they may look interesting. Follow them, or just at least check out what they're doing. Leave anything you want as on the chat. If you want to go ahead and put things that you're working on, GPTs, if you have apps, information, links, whatever, put them in there, and we'll be back next Friday. So thank you all. Have a great weekend and a great week.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you. Take care, guys.